Welcome to Thrive and Advance podcast, where we help you make business growth predictable, profitable, and enjoyable. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today, Laurie Taylor, President of Flashpoint LLC. Laurie's vast experience in starting and growing companies to the upwards of $12 million makes her an expert in how businesses of all sizes can make business growth predictable. Hello, Laurie.
Hi, Shorey. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you so much, and thank you for being our guest today. I am so excited for me and all of our audience to hear about your experience and everything you have to share with us.
Well, thank you, Shorey. It's a delight to be here. I love talking about business, so this is perfect.
Excellent. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I always kind of talk about myself this way. I was a reluctant entrepreneur. Shorey, I was in a career that I thought I'd have for the rest of my life for 14 years. And then apparently my boss thought differently and I was let go. And I didn't have a clue what I was going to go do. You kind of define yourself, right? From what you've been doing for so long. So I was like, gosh, what am I going to do? And so I ran into a good friend of mine and we started talking. And she was kind of in that same space. We weren't connected to any one place. So she said, Laurie, we'll figure it out. We'll come up with something. And from that very austere beginning, we created a company. We called it a marketing communications company. And we helped businesses kind of connect the dots between what the technology side was creating and what the marketing side needs to deliver. Mm-hmm. So we grew that company from that very weird little start to 120 employees. And as you mentioned, about $12 million in sales. So my experience of running a business was by the seat of the pants. And, you just make a lot of mistakes along the way, but you care. You have, both of us decided early on that we wanted to treat our employees as valued contributors, because we both came out of an environment where that wasn't always the case. And we didn't want to recreate a place that we weren't having a good time in. Mm-hmm. So we made that one of our goals, is to make sure that our employees were a critical component of everything that we did. And, that's kind of how we built the business. And we made a lot of mistakes. We didn't do everything right. But you still, I always say this, if your heart's in the right place, you might make some stupid mistakes, mm-hmm. but you're not going to do anything horrible that you can't recover from, right? So that's how we started. And that's the company that we grew to $12 million. And, again, I tell people this all the time. That wasn't the best way to do it. You should have a business plan. You should have a better approach to what you wanted to do. And we eventually got there, but that's not how we started.
Most of leaders, most business owners struggle with time management and how they can make sure that they're taking care of priorities. So in your experience, and as you ventured in creating your company then and now, what is the one habit that you have that really helps you make sure you're on task on getting priorities taken care of?
I think I would say to have a plan. First of all, I would start with a vision. I would make sure that you know where you want to go. Again, you've got to have something that keeps guiding you. And we can take lots of different roads to get to the same place. Mm-hmm. But what's always helped me is when I get up every morning, I have a vision of where I want my company to be. And we did that back when I was running that marketing communications company. And I still have that today running Flashpoint. I still get up every morning and remember why I'm here, what I'm trying to do. And so I've got to make a plan. Now, I'm not a big long range planner. I like to make plans daily that fit into weekly, that fit into monthly goals. Right. And so that's kind of how I've always done it myself. And I work with my clients to help them understand we don't have to go out too far mm-hmm. to be effective. So I think that would be one of the things I would just and I do that. I recommend that all the time to my clients, is just, let's make sure we have a plan. What do you want to do? When do you want to get it done? How are you going to judge if you get it done? So what are those key indicators, those, critical components that we have to track to make sure we get something done? So that's how I would describe my approach to that challenge, because it's big.
Right. So let's go back to your journey. You mentioned that we eventually got there. So what happened that you got there? What happened that you figured it out, having the right plan, having the right business vision? How did you get there?
It was a focus on sales. So I again remind us that, everything revolves around getting customers. If you have no customers, you have no business. So early on in that growth of that $12 million business, we were very focused on sales. That was one of the things that we made sure that we were really, really good at. And my business partner was exceptionally good at selling. That was her strength. Mine was once she brought something into the company, I could turn it into the deliverable, the thing we needed to produce. So I also remind our CEOs of this little dynamic, because it worked very well for us. There's got to be the visionary. There's got to be the person that can show you where you want to go. That was my business partner, but you need the person that can actually make it happen. And in my world, that was the COO role. That's the role I played. She was the CEO, I was the COO. And you need that combo, because my business partner wasn't really good at the details or getting something done. She just loved the challenge of going to get it. Mm-hmm. That hunter kind of mentality. And then I was the one that actually was able to organize it, set up the processes, hire the right people, do those things. So that's really how we started playing off each other. Mm-hmm. Recognizing, today they talk about strengths all the time, right? That's the big thing. And it is. I'm not negating that, but back then we didn't have that language. We didn't have all the wonderful tools that we actually see today in our bookshelves. You've got 1,000 books behind you, and there's always a book that helps you explain something. So that's, I think, the focus on what she did well, Shoray, and then what I did well, mm-hmm. is what kept us moving forward and not stumbling over each other, which we did plenty of times. I'm not pretending that we did everything well, but those critical positions and the roles, the clarity of roles in an organization are pretty important.
Excellent. So if you say that your recipe, the word strategy is used so much, overused, it's a cliche, and everybody hears and rolling eyes, oh my gosh, strategy again. So let's change that with the recipe. So your recipe for success, there are certain ingredients that are required, if you may call it that. What were your recipe to success as you were growing your company?
I think, again, I'll start with, you've got to have a clear vision and a good mission. So you've got to understand where you want to go. The second thing I believe is so important is values. Mm-hmm. You've got to identify what values you care about. And in a startup, I want that to come right from the CEO. I want them to believe in something and say, I believe in integrity. I believe in fun. I believe in, collaboration. Whatever they believe in should become the beginning of the values you create your company around.
Right.
Because those values then help us drive the behaviors we want. Mm-hmm. So I think I would start with the vision, the values, and then you've got to get good people on board. You've got to make sure you're hiring people, and I always say it this way, smarter than you. You don't want people that know the same thing you know. And that was hard for us. I have to remind ourselves that when we're running an organization, we think we have all the answers. We truly believe we know it all. It's our business. Of course we do. Mm-hmm. But people that we hire know different things than we do. And we have to be able to embrace that and say, hey, bring that on. Let me learn from you in this specific area. So vision, mission, values, getting a good management team on board, and then identify growth issues. And you and I both know I work with this model called the 7 stages of growth. So what I want business owners to recognize is, at least with this model that I use, we can actually predict how growth is going to impact you. And once you don't have to figure it out as you go anymore. So if we can help figure out the growth issues before they just come and kind of take us down. Because when I was running our company, the thing I kept hearing from our employees was, how big do we have to get? Because it's painful for them. You know, we're growing the business because we're excited about growth. Our employees, not so much. So, you know, you have to be able to help them understand what growth is. And so you have to define that growth and give them a way of looking at it and embracing it and not being afraid of it or thinking it's a bad thing. So those would be some starting points.
When you mention growing and its impact on people, now we know it's proven fact that as the company grows, so does the complexities. The complexities increase.
Yeah.
So how did you uncover and deal with the complexities that were brewing because you were growing so fast?
Well, and again, looking back, we didn't do it very well in the beginning. I didn't get the complexity thing until we were about 100 some employees. I just kept thinking the workload was increasing. So if the workload increases, what do? Hire more people. And so I kept going, oh my gosh, why is this so hard? It wasn't this hard yesterday. Why is it suddenly so much harder today than it was yesterday? And that's that whole concept that you mentioned, is as we add people to the organization, the complexity increases. And that's what I missed when we were starting up. As I embraced that idea of those 7 different stages of growth, and they're based on the number of employees you have, not revenue, not profitability. The most challenging things we deal with as owners of organizations are people. So when I figured that concept out, that as you add people, the complexity increases, and now when I'm talking with my clients, I help them understand that we need to focus on some processes and maybe some existing people issues before we just go, hey, let's add more people. Let's throw more people at the problem, because then it throws us into that newer stage of growth too soon. We're not ready for it.
Right. And
part of this model says what you don't get done in any stage of growth doesn't go away. So as soon as you leave that one stage of growth because you're in stage 3, in my vernacular, 20 to 34 employees, and you add a 35th employee, now you're in a whole nother environment and new things show up for you. So that was my really aha moment when I started to embrace this concept of these stages of growth. I recognized I had to do things differently. What worked for me yesterday may not work anymore. So those are some of the things that I think that complexity, it's a great concept for people to think in mind and keep in mind. And it's new. It's not something that a lot of people are aware of, and it certainly is unique in how it looks at the growth of an organization.
Yes, we both love, cherish, and use stages of growth, the X-ray predictive analytics that we put in front of any work we do with clients. Tell us about your experience, part of your journey, when you were introduced to this model, and how you reacted to it first, and where it took you. So that would be great to know for our audience.
You know, it's a great story, because we were about, I think, just getting into stage 6. So stage 6 has about 96 to 160 employees. But right before we jumped into stage 6, I ran into a gentleman by the name of James Fisher. He found us because we were a fast growing company with fewer than 500 employees. And his research, so he was a researcher and a business consultant. He found us and said, Laurie, I want to introduce you to these concepts. And Sheree, it was so amazing. He sat across from me in my office and literally in 15 minutes told me more about what was going on in my organization than I could articulate. I knew it. In the back of my mind, I'm like, why are all these things happening? Well, he just sat there and it was so easy for him to say, Laurie, are you experiencing X? Are you feeling Y? Is this showing up for you today? And I'm looking at him like, well, how do you know that? So that was my introduction to his research. And the reason he had done the research is, you know this, back when there were a lot of books written on corporate America. Jim Collins, Peter Drucker, it was the big corporations. Nobody was really focusing on what we call small businesses with fewer than 500 employees. That's what Fisher's research was all about. He wanted to find out why some of those smaller organizations thrived and made it, and other ones went away. So he did a research study of 650 successful CEOs to find out why they were successful. And he was able to then identify this complexity factor. So again, he saw that as companies grew and they added more people, things just got crazier. And so he came up with this model that said, if you're a stage 1 company, you have 1 to 10 employees. If you're a stage 2, you've got 11 to 19. And it goes that way all the way up to stage 7, which has between 161 and 500 employees. Once I understood the concepts, and I wasn't like, how do I say this? I wasn't sitting there across from him going, gee, thanks for telling me all this that I didn't understand. So I actually pushed him away for a while. I was not willing to hear this. And I'm not bragging about that, or I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. It's just sometimes how we get hit when we're running an organization. We think we should know more, and we don't sometimes. So he kept persisting, and he came back, and I embraced the concepts. He explained to us that we were getting ready to move into stage 6, but we were acting like a stage 4 company. And that was some of the pain we were experiencing. That was some of the dynamics that were keeping our company in this constant stage of what I call chaos. And we were growing. I mean, things were working, but there was a lot of pain, especially on the part of our employees. So Fisher's model helped me and my business partners start to really understand how to look at growth differently. So that was, and it really came into play, Shori, because in March 2000, the .com explosion happened, the implosion. And all of our clients were .com, telecommunications, and high technology companies. And literally, we almost lost the company because those clients struggled. They almost went away. So after I understood the concepts that Fisher was talking about, we took a different look at what we needed to do. We went back a couple of stages of growth. One, we had to lay off 30% of our staff. So it moved us back into an earlier stage of growth where we could really focus now on some of the things that we ignored when we kind of grew so fast and blew through those different stages of growth.
So that practically was, you hit a reset button.
We had to hit that reset button, yes, or we would have gone under. Yeah, very challenging. And again, you work with CEOs, you know the challenges we face, and the value. Here's the value in this program that you and I work with, is it gives us a language of growth. It gives us a way to actually talk about growth that our staff can understand. It doesn't become this mysterious thing that only gets talked about in management team meetings or behind closed doors. We started using the language of growth. For instance, the flood zone and the wind tunnel, which are 2 transition zones that you move through depending upon what stage of growth you're in. And both of those transition zones are full of a language that if you just explain it to your staff, hey, we're going to go from stage 1 to stage 2, and we're going to go through this thing called a flood zone. So we can't stop it, we can't avoid it, but let's talk about it. The flood zone says the level of activity is going to rise so much, we're going to feel like we're drowning.
Right.
So where do you feel like you're drowning? You know, I could turn to you as an employee, Showray, and say, Showray, tell me where you feel you're drowning. The conversation alone would give them some relief. Oh, okay, so this is normal. We're going to hit this. We're just going to have to be prepared for it, right? So those are some of I love the language of growth. I love giving our clients a way of speaking about growth that doesn't confuse or become mysterious.
Right. And those transition zones are when we gasp and throw people at the problem where it just exasperates the issue. So taking the time and having conversations, and sometimes re-engineering of the processes, sometimes regrouping before we keep on throwing people at it. When we first start a business and we do hire certain kind of people, certain type of employee, there comes a time that that employee set is not enough to carry the company's growth forward. Now, we do have loyalty to our employees. We talk to clients all the time. They promote within, which is great. They should always do that. We should do that. However, it becomes a sickness for the company, becomes a disease because we don't have the right capabilities in right places. So what is your experience with that? And tell us a little about your thoughts.
You're absolutely right, Sheree. The mistake that we made, and it's hard. So when you're in stage one, when you're just starting out, this was our experience. We would hire people that we just knew, that knew us, and got excited about where we wanted to take the company. We didn't really know what we were going to become. So we weren't sure what we were selling, what our product or service was going to be. We just knew we needed people on board to help us do the work that we were bringing in. Mm-hmm. So in stage one of the rules says hire for fit, not skill, because you don't quite know what that skill is yet. You haven't defined it. Mm-hmm. So that's a good thing. But then, like you just said, as you grow, the company starts evolving into roles and responsibilities, and you do know what skills you need. Now you have defined the product or service, and now you have people that want to buy. So now your skill sets become critical, and sometimes we outgrow the skills of those earlier people we hired. Right. If we can retrain, and if they've got a great attitude and they want to go grow with us, then it's all good. However, and I just spoke to about 30 CEOs where all of them, when I asked them this question, how many of you wish you would have let go of somebody earlier than you did? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All of their hands went up. We've all been there. And it's not a negative on the person. It's just that they're now in a wrong place for what their skill set has evolved to. And we need to move them out so we can move other people in that fit more clearly with what we know now that we need. And I think that's one of the hardest things we do as business owners is recognizing when that shift has to happen. But I got really good at helping people move on because I wanted them to have dignity and I wanted them to be financially okay. So we just made sure that when they had to move on, we were there to help make it as easy as possible for them. And, for the people who didn't leave. And there's another whole issue we sometimes ignore is how are the people feeling in the rest of the company by keeping people that they know don't fit, right? You've experienced this. Yes. It also has a really bad domino effect on the rest of the organization. So there's relief when we move that person on and everybody feels it.
Thank you. Now, you had a communication company, and communication is a key ingredient in any company that wants to continue growing. So as leaders create these recipes, strategies, whatever word you're comfortable hearing or saying, how does communication fit in and how does it relate to alignment within the organization and high performance? Because those are the things that I see all the time affecting organizations. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Right, I say this to CEOs all the time. I could literally solve 90% of every problem you have if I could just get you to communicate more often, more effectively, and say the same thing more than once. right? So communication is challenging, hugely challenging. And that's, again, goes back to understanding what's going on in your organization. How do you explain it to people? And the better way to do that is to what I call uncover the root cause of issues, and help people put a name to something so they're not struggling to figure out what it is that they're struggling with. And so through this program, like you and I talked about, this X-ray program that we use with our clients, it gives everybody a voice. It gives them a way of expressing how they feel about something. I could ask my employees all day long to tell me exactly what was going wrong or what they wanted help with. And, you know, they struggled with that. It wasn't, sometimes they didn't want to admit they didn't know something. So they would just say, oh, no, I'm good. Everything's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take them through a process that allows them to speak their truth and have the statement there to go, hey, that's exactly how I feel. That now I get why I'm so upset about this, or I know now why I am so frustrated. So I think communication has to start with clarity. So we need to help them understand what it is they're trying to communicate. And if it's not putting words in their mouth, it's just helping them put a sentence together that says, this is exactly how I'm looking at something. And then to your point, Showray, if we get them to all have that dialogue and that conversation in a way that isn't threatening or making them feel stupid, which is the last thing we want,
Mm-hmm.
we get that alignment. Now everybody's going, oh my gosh, that's how I feel. I didn't know you felt that way. Well, then, hey, if you feel that way and I feel that way, what if we got together and came up with a plan to fix that as a group? So then you can get that alignment. If we can get alignment, we can engage, right? And you know, the Gallup studies with the engagement statistics were 34% engaged. That leaves us a huge number of disengaged.
Right.
So the more we can get that alignment, we'll get engagement. And if we can engage people, they're going to deliver. They're going to figure out how to execute on that plan that they came up with as a group. So
right.
That's how I look at it.
Right. And what I experience is also within the leadership team, executive team, you find a lot of misalignment due to lack of communication. And I see CEOs that are very frustrated that their vision is not coming to fruition, and they don't know why.
Yeah.
And the executive team is the extension of the CEO. So what is your experience, and how do you get the executive team on the same page so they can therefore get their teams on that same page?
You know, and that's a great comment, Showray, because as a CEO, you think people literally get what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You know, you're talking about it, not a lot, but you're talking about it. And so I was working with a CEO a year ago who was stage 3, so 20 to 34 employees. He was the founder, and he'd been there 18 years. The company was in place for 18 years. He called it an 18-year-old startup.
Wow.
Because what you just said, he never felt his team was behind him. He kept thinking, I've said it 1,000 times. Why don't they get it? I've told them what I want them to do 1,000 times. Why aren't they doing it? You know, and he was a good guy. But what he was missing is that ability to help bring out the issues those people were really frustrated with. And he wasn't a real people person. So he kind of created a little bit of a barrier. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't easy to go talk to him. So they chose not to. But when we went through this process called the X-ray, where again, it's not about the CEO. This is about the organization. Now they're having conversations about the organization, and it's not personal to that CEO. And that's, I think, the best way to go about helping that CEO see pockets of where they just missed it. Either they felt they were transmitting it through their own brain and it was merging into their brains, but there was such an expectation on the part of that CEO that everybody understood what his concerns were, And when we went through the process to start talking about it, at the end of this process, he told me, he said, Laurie, these are smart people. I'm blown away by how much they know and how good they are. He came in with a whole different attitude, and we were able to have conversations and dialogue that showed him there's a lot of brain power in this staff of yours. You just need to give them an opportunity to explore it, talk about it, dialogue around it, and then come together and fix those problems, which is exactly what they were able to do. Big deal, though. Big deal.
Yes, that's a great segue to talk about leadership. Many books are written about leadership. It's very important, but not one type of leadership will fit all stages of an organization.
Yeah.
As the company changes, so has the leader. And that is difficult, particularly because we're all masters of our own universe, right? We are expert in X or Y. We don't go necessarily to learn leadership of all facets. And we start a company with our expertise, and here we are, not understanding how our lack of understanding of transformation that a leader has to go through comes to affect our organization. So let's talk about that a little bit and your experiences.
And John Maxwell, he's the guru in leadership. And one of the things that he talks about in his book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, is the law of the lid. And it's the very first law. And it says that the company will only grow to the capability of the leader. So here's the leader, here's the company trying to grow. And if the leader isn't always doing this, the company is going to stay here. So I love that. He's got 20 other ones, but that's the one I think just says so much to an organization. So leaders have to continue to evolve. They have to always look at themselves first and say, what more can I do? Because it is about your people, but they require you to help them. And the better leader you are, the more help you are to them. And I take leadership very seriously. I know you do also, because if we create good leaders, we create great companies.
Yes.
And you've probably over the years might have worked for a toxic manager.
Of course.
I have.
And
so we really want those leaders, those managers to be the best they can be, because that's what connects us to our people, and our people are our business. So it doesn't matter what business you're in. It doesn't matter. It's every business needs people. And if those people don't feel supported and they don't feel connected to those leaders, then they're gone or they're disengaged. That's the main issue, I think, with the disengagement factor.
Right.
So leadership is huge. And every person that's in charge of an organization should make that their number one responsibility. I've got to be better at what I do so my team can be better. And reading books is one thing, yes, but sometimes you need an outside perspective. You need somebody to come in and look at you through clearer glasses to show you as a leader where your weaknesses are. Because as leaders, like you said, we don't think we are weak. We, who comes in and asks us questions every day? Our employees. Who answers those questions every day? We do. So we're not necessarily looking for them to come up with answers. We like being there. We like answering all those questions. That doesn't make you a good leader. That makes you good at answering questions. A good leader engages those employees to take on more of their own responsibility and creates more of a coach-like, what would you do? How would you handle that? I'm looking for your input. Any ideas that you might have, let me hear them. So leadership is a constant evolution. And I really love it when I find a leader who looks at themselves first and go, it's all about me. I've got to be better. If I can be better, then I know I can help my team. But sometimes that outside perspective is so critical.
That is absolutely true. What is the one thing, if you had one thing to tell business owners, leaders, one advice that you feel is transformational for them, what would that be?
It would be get to know your people. Stop treating them as cogs in a wheel and truly get to know their beliefs, their aspirations, their goals. Why are they even at your company? If you do that, I truly believe this, Shorey. I believe if leaders truly know how to emotionally connect to people, their people will, charge hills for them. They'll be there when things get tough. They will go to bat for them in any situation. But as leaders, that's our job, not theirs. We have to open that door. We have to show them that we are authentic, we're transparent, we make mistakes, we're not perfect. And so you've got to find a way as a leader to engage people and because I think what we're looking for is the truth. You want to know what's really going on in your organization. Unless you have a relationship and a connection to each of those people, they're not going to tell you the truth. They're going to hide the truth. And now we're dealing with situations that we can't answer because we don't know the real problem. So it would be that connect. Don't be afraid to be human. Don't be afraid to sit and talk with your employees at a level that is different than just how's the project going, or I see you spent more money this month than you should have. Those are conversations that's comfortable to have as a leader. Those are not the connecting conversations.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, well, just this. I love to watch people like you and people that are in our community, Shorey, work with CEOs. I get that, again, they know a lot. It's just that part of reaching out and being willing to engage other people to help them is so important. I wish I'd done it more when we were growing that communications company. I wish that was a run regret. I just kept thinking, it's my company, I know what I'm doing. We don't always know what we're doing.
That's right. Thank you so much, Laurie, for taking the time to be with us. It's always a pleasure and wealth of information for me to talk to you and hear from you and your experiences, and I'm sure it's the same for our audience. Hopefully we can get together in the future and dig in some of these topics deeper. Thank you, and I look forward to having you on our podcast again.
Thanks, Shorey. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.